O'Reilly. Are your wiper blades chattering, skipping, or squeaking? Don't let streaks or smearing on your windshield compromise your visibility. When it's time to replace your wiper blades, stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts and see our selection. Our professional parts people will even install your new wiper blades while you wait. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today. O'Reilly Auto Parts.
For all you elk hunters out there, chasing turkeys is basically the same thing. I know the reaction you just gave me, but don't knock it till you try it, and don't try it without OnX. The Hunt app will not only help you find new areas on public ground, but I use it to find out landowner info to get permission on private ground that I see birds on as well. OnX Hunt has a special offer for you. Use code CAL to receive 20% off your membership at onxmaps.com/hunt and find more birds this spring.
There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
From Meat Eater's World News Headquarters in Bozeman, Montana, this is Cal's Week in Review with Ryan Cal Callahan. Now, here's Cal.
Following President Trump's public declaration of support last week for permanently funding the popular Land and Water Conservation Fund and addressing the public lands maintenance backlog, a bipartisan group of senators introduced a bill to do just that. S3422, the Great American Outdoors Act, introduced March 9th, would dedicate the full $900 million annually to the Land and Water Conservation Fund, as well as providing an additional $1.9 billion annually to address massive maintenance backlogs on federal public lands and facilities. Senator Martin Heinrich of New Mexico, one of the original sponsors of the legislation, called it a, quote, once-in-a-lifetime deal in an exclusive interview with the Meat Eater. The Land and Water Conservation Fund passed in the early 60s, but in recent years, the best we've done is to fund it at about half. To have full and permanent funding, this has been the holy grail for a long time, and to pair that up with being able to really address the backlog in trail maintenance and visitor centers and all the other things that our outdoor public lands economy relies on, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, said Senator Heinrich out of New Mexico. The bill already has 54 co-sponsors in the Senate from both parties. Again, both parties, that is what bipartisan means, and that is what gets things done. As a bonus, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who sets the vote schedule, is a co-sponsor of the bill. Many members of the upper chamber of Congress are hoping to put the bill to a vote within a week or two. Only 6 more co-sponsors would form a rare supermajority. A supermajority brings with it the possibility of little to no floor debate and no yahoos coming out of the woodwork trying to introduce damaging amendments. This bill arrives in the wake of President Trump's tweet in support of the idea and in support of 2 Republican senators up for re-election. Some see political theater at play here, but if you are on the side of wild lands, wild places, and having the ability to enjoy them, who cares about the theater? We have a rare opportunity for results. Senator Heinrich goes on to say, well, sometimes it's helpful to have an election or two to focus the mind, and I think that may have had some impact on this debate. But whether people's motivations are political or not, this is the right thing to do. I've been fighting these LWCF fights for over 20 years. This is an enormous opportunity, and the one way you can get rid of all that issue fatigue is to do the right thing once and for all. Can you imagine Not having to fight for land and water conservation funding every year. No more old Callahan having to harp on you to call your elected officials because we actually got it done. The Land and Water Conservation Fund was established in 1964 to reinvest royalties from offshore oil and gas drilling into public parks, access, and recreation. Those funds have gone into more than 40,000 such projects nationwide. LWCF sunset in 2015 and again in 2018. You know, sunset is a warmer term for letting something lapse. Like, I didn't pay my rent, I let my rent sunset. Anyway, LWCF was then permanently reauthorized last February. The fund accrues up to $900 million annually, but that full amount has only been appropriated twice. Typically, more than half gets siphoned off for other purposes. This new bill will ensure that all of the money goes into conserving land and water resources every year. The National Park Service, which manages many of America's marquee public lands, from Yosemite to Yellowstone to Great Smoky Mountain, has accumulated some $12 billion worth of deferred maintenance projects in recent years, from potholed roads to public restrooms. This act would provide $1.3 billion annually until 2025 to address these problems. It would also provide $285 million annually to the U.S. Forest Service for the same kinds of issues, as well as around $95 million each to the Bureau of Land Management, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Bureau of Indian Education. Lantani, president and CEO of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, was among the conservation leaders working hard to get maintenance funding for the Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, and BLM included. He said the Great American Outdoors Act speaks to many of the biggest priorities of the conservation community. Increased deferred maintenance funding for these important public land management agencies is widely supported by diverse stakeholders. Together, with dedicated LWCF funding, this support for our land managers will offer tangible benefits to our public lands, waters, and wildlife, and the outdoor-reliant economies, communities, and individuals who depend on them. Sportsmen and women thank our Senate leaders for recognizing the crucial importance of these strategic investments. Though introduction in the Senate is a big step forward, nothing is ever guaranteed in Congress. Senator Heinrich goes on to say, "I think the scale of this in history is really important, so let's not screw it up. Let's all come together and work together to get this thing across the finish line. It's not done until the ink dries at the White House. People could change their minds. This president has been known to change his mind. So we have to keep the pressure on right to the very end." And that, my friends, is exactly what we need to do. This week's call to action is so important, it is our lead story. I am setting a preliminary goal for all of us listening to this podcast to get only 6 more co-sponsors for the Great American Outdoors Act, S3422. Call your congressional representatives. If they're co-sponsoring this bill, thank them. If they're not, ask why not. This is one of the most important pieces of legislation for hunters and anglers in this decade. We might not ever get another chance to achieve these goals. The time is now. As simple as I can make it. Type, "Who is my congressman?" into the old search bar. You will enter your zip code, and you will get your congressional representative. Email, call, write a letter. You can also fill out form letters provided by great groups like Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. Form letters can do some of the heavy lifting for you, and you don't have to sign up for the conservation organization, but, you should think about it. This is so important. I am tempted to tell you again. Let's get those additional co-sponsors. Let's make the Great American Outdoors Act, S3422, a win. For even more information on this one, check out Sam Lundgren's fantastic bit of journalism at themeateater.com. One last note, when LWCF came on the scene, it passed the Senate 92-1. That's a high bar to beat, but I think we can do it.
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. I don't know if you stopped in at an O'Reilly lately, but I use one because we have one right not too far from my house. People there are super helpful. I don't care if I'm getting boat batteries, car parts, whatever. Love those guys. They got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you don't have to worry if you're in a jam. The team at O'Reilly Auto Parts can test your battery for free, in or out of your car. If it needs to be replaced, they'll help you find just the right battery for your vehicle. If you need your windshield wipers replaced, a brake light fixed, quick service, they'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. Whether you are a car aficionado or an auto novice, you will find the employees at O'Reilly Auto Parts to be knowledgeable, helpful, and best of all, friendly. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things do-it-yourself auto. You can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/meat-eater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/meat-eater.
For all you elk hunters out there, chasing turkeys is basically the same thing. I know the reaction you just gave me, but don't knock it till you try it, and don't try it without OnX. The Hunt app will not only help you find new areas on public ground, but I use it to find out landowner info to get permission on private ground that I see birds on as well. OnX Hunt has a special offer for you. Use code CAL to receive 20% off your membership at onxmaps.com/hunt and find more birds this spring.
Now, a lot of you guys are familiar with the old hunting tradition of eating, some organ, the heart or a chunk of liver off the first animal you kill. I had that when I was a little kid, and it was a big deal. Organ meats were always prized by frontier people who knew the importance of getting a lot of different minerals and nutrients. And as often is the case, those guys were onto something, because organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. And you can get the same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil, made exclusively from regeneratively raised, grass-fed, and finished cattle. Heart and Soil's unique freeze-drying process means all those important nutrients are trapped in, ensuring you experience every one of the benefits of nature's superfood in a clean, convenient, taste-free capsule. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And make sure to use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. That's heartandsoil.co. Use the code MeatEater.
This week, hot lizards, great whites, listener questions, more tales from the ice, and keeping it local. But first, I'm going to tell you about my week. Well, it has been one heck of a week for you longtime listeners. It may sound a bit repetitive, but this is new, I swear. I met up with Garrett Smith and his dad, Phil. Phil is a former Miles City, Montana semi-famous guitar picker who, in my opinion, should have been prevented from leaving the town of Miles City, home of the Cowboys, by the way, on account of the fact that having this genuine and generous music maker as part of your town and tax base generally makes it more superior than the next town over. And you may know Garrett by his nickname and Instagram handle, Dirt Myth. He has many of his father's attributes, but he also takes amazing pictures and once rode a charging grizzly bear on Alaska's Fognak Island. Anyway, I met up with the Smiths and used some motorized backcountry vehicles to access a frozen lake to camp and fish for a few days. I drove a Can-Am Defender with long powder tracks. It's essentially like having a snowmobile strapped to each foot. It's fun and an efficient way to travel across snow. Most importantly, I placed on the windshield of my embarrassingly fancy ride an off-road vehicle sticker, which if you are going to ride off-road, you need to purchase. This is a tax that ultimately provides an incredible amount of funding for trail maintenance in every state. On top of that, it is a new license year in Montana. The three of us had to purchase new fishing and conservation licenses. Then we bought a bunch of fishing stuff, which contributes to an excise tax called Dingle Johnson. Then we bought gas, food, and generally just made folks smile as we bumped into them in the small town that we met and geared up in. What I'm saying is, these outdoor pursuits are highly impactful. We even caught a few fish. One thing that I suppose I knew, but had never taken proper stock of due to the fact that I had a different cleaning method, is a burbot, as I mentioned last week, freshwater cod or gladiform. The burbot, his heart, is located at the very rear of the body cavity, as in the heart is closer to the tail than the anal vent. Anal vent, of course, is a classier way of saying uni hole.
I don't know. Is it classy enough?
Anyway, I was hoping someone could write in and tell me what the advantage is of this most posterior of heart locales. Then, in local news, a bunch of folks from Steel Power Equipment showed up here in Bozeman. We joined the Gallatin Valley Land Trust, as well as the Montana Conservation Corps, in doing a bit of trail work while trying out all their new saws. We used battery-powered saws, which worked like a quiet dream, until I got too self-conscious, thinking that all the hard-working MCC folks would think that the quiet meant that we were just sitting on our duffs not doing anything because they couldn't hear the saws. Then we fired up the gas saws and made some sawdust and some big piles. I thought it very, very cool that the folks from Steel were willing to take a day to do work on a local project, especially with all that shiny new equipment. So thanks a bunch to them. Also, thank you to the Gallatin Valley Land Trust and Peter Brown, their head of stewardship, for letting us jump in and volunteer. The GVLT has a bunch of great projects that actually get overlooked because of their relatively small size acreage-wise, but as we saw, no pun intended, a small parcel can provide a lot of access to the general public. The GVLT can purchase and hold land privately, provide easements, and also transfer or sell that land to the U.S. Forest Service for permanent access. The MCC, Montana Conservation Corps, did 2,000 miles of trail work last year. If you ever get the chance to go do some volunteering with them, do it. It is very insightful to see where the boot leather hits the trail. Moving on to a quick listener question. We are back to turkey season, and Star, with 2 R's, writes in anticipation of he and his son's first turkey hunt, asking why is it frowned upon to shoot a turkey when it is in full strut? For those of you who do not know, typically a hunter aims for the turkey's head, both to ensure a fast kill and to minimize damaging meat. It is ideal to stop a turkey with a putt, boop, boop, to get the bird to stretch his head high and alert. This puts the bird's head as far from the bulk of the meat as possible. When a turkey is in full strut, the head is still elevated from the breast, but not by nearly as much. Depending on your shooting angle, pellets from your shotgun may damage some meat. That is the reason for the frowning. Use your best judgment. I only have a couple of days of turkey hunting this year, and I love having the meat in the freezer. I also use this turkey shot by Federal Ammunition called TSS, and it tends to make very small holes that zip through the bird, and I just don't see that much trauma if my pellets go low. Which is, a very long way of saying, things aren't always perfect, take the shot. When you and your son have a bunch of time and a few turkeys under your belts after several seasons, you can get much more picky. Good luck out there and watch out for ticks on your soft parts. Brandon from Central Indiana writes in, my buck for muzzleloader season had small fangs when I was prepping the skull to boil. I have hunted this property for several years, and 4 years ago, my wife, Lindsay, shot an antlered doe. She was about 90-some pounds and had 7-inch velveted spikes. I have heard of this before, but still rare. So the fangs aren't the first oddity we have seen on this farm. So I'm asking Cal, have you ever seen or heard of a white-tailed deer with fangs, or mule deer for that matter? Thanks for your time and keep up the good work. In response, there are actually several different fanged or tusked deer in the world. The non-native but still living inhabitant to North America is the Sika deer that inhabits Maryland's Chesapeake Bay. Fangs or tusks were once a prominent feature on all of our deer here in North America. Eventually, the antlers took over the game in regards to winning sexual favor through display. One fun fact, and possible leftover from that tusked period, is the black patches on the chins of whitetail and mule deer. Those black patches would have provided a very nice backdrop for the protruding white tusk or fang from the upper gum, making the tusk all the more visible. Female deer sprouting antlers is not completely uncommon, but it isn't a throwback to an earlier time either. According to the Quality Deer Management Association, female deer sprouting antlers is most commonly a result of abnormally high testosterone levels. In very rare cases, you may find an antlered doe that has prominent female genitalia and recessed male genitalia. Considering how many people think does taste better than bucks, that's kind of like having it all. And speaking of having it all, we're going to slide over to our herpetology desk. Charlie, a female Komodo dragon, just gave birth at the Chattanooga Zoo in Tennessee. Charlie did this without a male counterpart. That is called independence.
Now put your hands up.
It is also called parthenogenesis, which is, as you can imagine, very rare in vertebrates. In fact, Komodo dragons were not even known to have this ability until 2006, according to Scientific American. Parthenogenesis is when an embryo forms from an unfertilized egg cell. Some species have evolved to solely reproduce this way, but the Komodo dragon participates in what is called facultative parthenogenesis, essentially meaning that Charlie had the choice to reproduce without involving a male dragon. Considering how well known Komodo dragons are for their aggressiveness, bacteria-filled bites, and general preference for solitude, it's easy to see how the solo reproduction route could have developed. Adult male Komodo dragons can grow to 200 pounds, measure longer than 8.5 feet in length, and have been known to take down Timor deer, which is like a semi-swamp dwelling elk that weighs in around 300 pounds. Anyway, congrats, Charlie. One more from the Herp desk. A recent study from the journal Nature, Ecology, and Evolution shows that certain anoles, a roughly 2-inch long lizard, have evolved specifically to live in urban environments, sporting longer limbs, specialized scales, and larger toe pads, allowing the lizard to more effectively maneuver the urban jungle or desert in this case. These urban anoles, when compared to their forest-dwelling counterparts, were able to function and tolerate much higher heat levels, which, considering how hot and how much hotter our urban environments are getting, is a trait worth taking note of. These urbanophilic anoles, a term coined by their lead researcher, biologist Kristen Winchell, were able to function normally at 104 degrees and, on average, 1.47 degrees hotter than other anole populations. More neat stuff for sure, but it is the plasticity, the ability for this animal to change its behavior to its environment, and possibly select for the wide range of genes that allow for the increased heat tolerance that makes this tiny lizard so hot right now. In herpetological circles, that is.
He's so hot right now.
Now we're gonna swim menacingly over to our shark desk. I'm talking great whites, of course. In order to do this, I have to mention Jaws. One of my favorite all-time movies. If you are also a Jaws fan and fancy yourself a bit of a fisherman, check out our new senior fishing editor, Joe Cermelli's article at themeateater.com titled Would Quint's Reel Have Cranked in Jaws? First, Joe, it's Captain Quint. The movie is getting old, but let's not strip the colorful captain of his title.
The whole damn thing.
Second, the answer is available at themeateater.com. Go find it and welcome Joe Cermelli to the Meat Eater team. Also on the topic of great whites, and not covered by Joe, the bite and spit technique. Formerly known, of course, as the bite and spit hypothesis. First proposed by ichthyologist John McCosker in 1985, according to Forbes, is just that. The idea that a great white shark, which, by watching Shark Week, we know always violently seizes its prey, launching it out of the water, shaking it with their massive, powerful heads, shredding the helpless pinniped into a bloody red pulp, maybe doesn't always eat that way? Sometimes, like in the instance described recently in the journal Marine and Freshwater Research, the great white will attack a victim with one powerful bite, then spit its prey out and let it bleed. To be honest, the incidents described here involves two 13-plus foot great whites, yes, Captain Quint's possible 14-footers with 2 tons on them, biting a live, swimming humpback whale, which can grow to 60-plus feet and 40-plus tons, so saying the shark spit out the whale is probably less accurate than bite and let go. In this case, the great whites bit and spit in 40-minute intervals, allowing the more than likely very sick humpback whale to lose blood until it eventually sank. The sinking of the humpback simultaneously accomplished the first ever observed attack of a live swimming humpback whale by great white sharks, while turning the bite and spit hypothesis to the bite and spit technique. And last but not least, we're going to finish things up by moving over to our ever-popular law enforcement desk. 3, quote, brothers belonging to a University of Georgia fraternity dumped the remains of a couple raccoons, 2 dead rats, and a skinned coyote on the porch of another fraternity house, and got caught for it. The brothers were fined, but not with animal cruelty, as the critters were legally harvested for their hides. According to police reports, there was some yelling and drinking involved as well. Come on, boys. Animals need to be treated with respect. Trapping in this country has enough problems. It doesn't need the additional PR problem of being associated with the polo shirt, flip-flop, and khaki short wearing fraternity crowd.
Because when the going gets tough, the tough get going.
That's all I've got for you this week. Go call your darn duly elected congressional representatives and tell them to co-sponsor the Great American Outdoors Act. In addition, please let me know what I'm missing by writing in to askcal@themeateater.com. That's askcal@themeateater.com. If you are loving what you're hearing, tell some friends to subscribe and leave me a review by hitting that furthest right-hand star wherever you download your podcasts. I'll talk to you next week.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase.
Outdoor adventure won't wait for engine problems. Things like hard starts, rough performance, and lost fuel economy are often caused by fuel gum and varnish buildup. Seafoam can help your engine run better and last longer. Simply pour a can in your gas tank. Hunters and anglers rely on Seafoam to keep their engines running the way it should the entire season. Pick up a can of Seafoam today at your local auto parts store or visit seafoamworks.com to learn more. That's seafoamworks.com to learn more.